What's up, my juice lovers? Welcome to the Cold Pressed Truth. This is Charlie Wetlaufer. Today, I'm here to tell you that if you've been buying raw almonds from a grocery store or distributor in the US, they've been lying to you. Now, why would I say such a thing? Well, as it turns out, there's been a law that the USDA calls the Almond Rule since 2007. So it's been almost 13 years now that all almonds grown in California must be pasteurized. And I know the first question you'll ask is like, well, if it's only all the almonds in California, maybe it's not that big a deal. But here's an article from 2017 in Paste magazine that says California alone produces 80% of the world's almonds and 100% of the US commercial supply. So that means 100% of the almonds you're buying retail are from California. Now, there might be some small local farms growing them in other places, but really the California climate is why they're all grown in California. So what does the law say exactly? Well, here's a post from 2007 from foodnavigator.com kind of outlining the law. All almonds originating from California will have to comply with the strict new pasteurization regulations implemented last week by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in response to recent salmonella outbreaks. Now, of course, salmonella outbreaks are not good, but further down in the article, it says in the past 5 years, the almond industry has experienced 2 food safety incidents in which raw almonds were recalled due to the presence of salmonella. These occurred in 2001 in Canada and 2004 in Oregon. Okay, so we're talking about 1 outbreak in the US and 1 outbreak in Oregon. We have outbreaks every year with all kinds of different foods. For example, raw beef, and they have not made a law against raw beef. We've had outbreaks with romaine lettuce recently. They haven't made a law against raw romaine lettuce, so why are they picking on almonds? It's the same reason that they made the law against raw juice. In my opinion, just because the large producers in these industries want to make it harder for small companies to compete. And the way you do that is you make it very expensive to make the product. You raise the barrier to entry. In raw juice, that means you have to either buy pasteurization equipment, which is tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you have to buy HPP equipment, which can be up to millions of dollars, or you send your product to someone else that has HPP equipment. But either way, it's expensive and it makes it very difficult for you to start a little business and grow because of these strict regulations and laws. If you have a little local juice bar and you're making raw juice, you're not allowed to sell it to the cafe next door so they can sell it to their customers. It has to be pasteurized or HPP. That's similar to what's going on in almonds here. Now in juice, you have to achieve a 5-log reduction, which means like 0.9999% of living organisms and microbials must be killed. In the almond industry, it's a 4-log reduction in salmonella bacteria. And they allow you to achieve that in a few different ways. This is where it gets kind of scary, okay? So the few different ways that you're allowed to pasteurize almonds is 1, oil roasting, dry roasting, or blanching. No big deal, it's basically cooking. Steam processing. A short burst of steam treats the surface of the nut meat only. This process meets USDA National Organic Program standards. Does not diminish the nutritional value and sensory attributes of the almonds. That's debatable. So, I mean, the industry's definition of nutritional value can be very different from an individual consumer. And here's the one that's scary. The third method that's approved is by using a surface treatment of propylene oxide, PPO. So I had to look this up. I did not know what PPO is. And so PPO is basically a chemical that's used mostly in making polypropylene plastics. And here's a hazard summary of PPO. Propylene oxide is used in the production of polyethers, the primary component of polyurethane foams, and propylene glycol. Acute short-term exposure of humans and animals to propylene oxide has caused eye and respiratory tract irritation. Dermal contact, even with dilute solution, has caused skin irritation and necrosis in humans. Propylene oxide is also a mild central nervous system CNS depressant in humans. Inflammatory lesions of the nasal cavity, trachea, and lungs, and neurological effects have been observed in animals chronically, long-term exposed to propylene oxide by inhalation. Propylene oxide has been observed to cause tumors at or near the site of administration in rodents, causing 4 stomach tumors following ingestion via gavage, experimentally placing the chemicals in the stomach, and nasal tumors after inhalation exposure. EPA has classified propylene oxide as a group B2 probable human carcinogen. But guess what? That's one of the approved methods of achieving the 4-log reduction on almonds. The big food and beverage industry is so gross. Every couple of weeks, I'm reading about something that's just like drives me crazy that this stuff's allowed. And you're not required to put processing aids like PPO on a list of ingredients because it's not considered an ingredient. It's considered a processing aid. That's another one of these screwed up laws by the FDA. And there's other things in the juice industry like that as well. Like some chemicals they can put in the juice to extend shelf life. But because the FDA has considered them a processing aid, you don't have to list it as ingredients. And it's really toxic stuff. So, and of course, my big argument is that I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with pasteurized almonds or pasteurized juice. I just think that consumers should have a choice, which means that you have to put it on the label, right? But there is no FDA regulation for using the term raw. So they can pasteurize the almonds or they can use this PPO stuff, and then they can label them as raw almonds and sell them to you at a grocery store. And there's no law against this. It's totally legally fine. Okay. There have been some lawsuits of juice companies labeling their HPP juices raw, and they've changed the labeling, but that wasn't because they're breaking the law. That's because they're getting sued. So, and, when they passed this almond law, apparently there is a lot of pushback from some consumer groups that said, and this is how the government responded. Let me go back to this article here. In response to the comment that consumers should have a choice to buy raw or processed almonds, the suggestion that almonds be labeled as non-pasteurized, USDA assumes that the commenter means labeling at the consumer level. The Act provides authority for requirements under a marketing order at the handler level, not the consumer level. Thus, no changes have been made to the proposed rule based on this comment. So their response is basically like, hey guys, we're not making any laws about the labeling. We're making laws about the processing. So this isn't our concern. Except it is their concern because now they're passing this law, says they have to be pasteurized, but then they're not regulating how things are labeled. So I think the whole fight against raw foods is getting worse. There's new laws coming out about like dried apricots and some other things. And I think we're going to see more and more laws being passed about banning raw foods. And I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is to educate consumers and let them choose between raw or processed. We have a right to know the nutrition of our food and the ingredients. We should have a right to know what processes have been done on the food. Then we should have a right to choose processed or raw. So I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think that consumers should have a right to choose raw almonds or raw juice, or should the government make these laws? Now, in the government's defense, pasteurized products are safer, but should we have a right to choose the always safe product, or should we have or the usually safe product if we want to take the risk? You tell me. Comment below. If you guys like these educational videos, go ahead and subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And that's the cold pressed truth. Peace.